Hello, good morning. We are live. Can I have somebody let me know in the chat if you can hear me? I think I got all of the tech issues that we were having last month. I think we got them all figured out this month. So I just want to double check that you can hear me. Wait for that confirmation before I get started. Can you hear me? Yes! Okay, we are on. Welcome to this month's Ask Me Anything. Tried this out last month and it was super fun. So I decided, let's try it again. Let's do it again for to celebrate the method starting on the 1st, on September 1st. Let me have a nice little timer right here. This is when enrollment ends for the method, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but just so you're aware. And of course, if you go down to the description, there's links about the method and all that stuff. We're going to talk about it more because we have some questions that came in throughout the month for this Ask Me Anything. And I'm going to tell you about how if you have questions like these, then you're probably an excellent fit for the method. Because these questions directly relate to the different phases of the method. So without further ado, let's get into the first question. The first question is from Michaela. Michaela says, I feel like if I take a break, I'm putting myself behind schedule and I have a long way to go. This is a very common problem. We all know that learning a language is a commitment. It's a time commitment, and you have to put so many hours in, and there's all these different websites that'll tell you, if you're a native English speaker and you are learning this language, and if you commit this many hours, this many days per week, then, oh, hold on, wait a minute. Is this not going through? Oh, it's not going through. Hold on. I don't know how to make this. There we go. Okay, I am sorry about that. That timer did not come on until just now. Man, I thought the tech issues were fixed. You know what? I'm gonna turn this off and get back to the question. Anyways, so I was talking about how we know that language learning is a long-term commitment, and that puts a lot of pressure and stress on us because we want to be successful as early as possible, right? And so if we commit as much time as we can now, then that means that theoretically the path to having learned the language and being fluent and all that good stuff, theoretically that will be shorter, right? Because, we have a long way to go. Here's the thing. And, with the method, we jot out this entire journey so we know exactly what's going to look like. Taking a break is not something that's going to hold you back. And here's why. So imagine, let's say, that you go to the gym often. You go to the gym like 4 times a week, whatever it is. And then you get a cold. You get a cold, you get sick, and you're stuck in bed for like a week. And you cannot move. Physically, you cannot move. And so, of course, you can't go to the gym. Of course, you can't, do all the reps and pull all the weight and all that stuff. And so, in those scenarios, it's easy to say, wow, I wish I could work out right now. Because if I could work out right now, I'd be closer to my goals. But I just can't. Like, I physically cannot get up. Is that, like, imagine language learning like that. We tend to, when we need breaks mentally, when we need brain breaks, we tend to not acknowledge them with the same gravity that we acknowledge physical exercise. I mean, because language learning is just mental exercise, right? And we have this tendency to not think it's as important to rest our mental muscles as it is to rest our physical muscles. And so it's easy enough to have this perspective of, I want to take a break. I should take a break. Things are so busy. Things are so stressful and I just don't have time. But I feel guilty and I have a long way to go. And I don't want, this is already a long-term thing. I don't want to make it even longer. I'm already stressed out about how long it takes to learn a language. I don't want to make it worse for myself. So let me just power through it. I have done that. I have done both options. I have powered through it and I have allowed myself the break. These are the two things that happen. The first one, if you power through it, you burn out. You burn out, you feel guilty, it just doesn't work anymore. It's like going to the gym when you're sick. It's like you cannot pump as much iron. You can't run as many miles. You just can't because your body can't. It needs rest. It's the same thing with language learning. When you're tired and if you force yourself to do it anyways, it's not going to be as effective. You'll find yourself, if you are very confident in conversations and you find yourself jumping into a conversation, even though you really don't want to, you're really tired, it's just going to get worse because your fatigue is going to make it harder for your brain to use the language. And you're going to feel that. You're going to feel that you're not as fluent, not as confident as you usually are, which just builds onto the layers of feeling just bad about yourself. And you eventually burn out. And then, not only do you burn out, but you start having these negative connotations with language learning. You start to feel like you can't do it. You start to feel like it's impossible, like you will never be consistent. Start to feel like it's never going to work. When in reality, the issue is that you need to give yourself a break. And when your brain and your body's telling you that you need a break, it's not an option. It's not a light suggestion. This is what your brain and what your body need. And I don't know if you've heard the phrase, if you don't take breaks, your body will take breaks for you. And you won't get to decide when those breaks are, how they are, what level they are. You don't get to control that if you don't make the decision to take the break for yourself. The other part about this, I'm putting myself behind schedule and I have a long way to go. So let's talk about expectations about learning language. So like I said, we have this idea of what it's going to look like. We have this idea of where you are now, where you're going to go. And by the way, this is exactly what phase 1 is all about. We start out with, first of all, we start out with mindset, but then we go into where you're eventually going to end up, where you are now, and then chopping up those expectations, those goals. Here's the thing. We like to assume, we like to hope that we'll be perfectly healthy, perfectly happy all of the time, right? That, there's nothing that's going to get in the way, and theoretically we have more good days than bad days, and the bad days aren't that bad, and we can just power through it. We can be motivated, we can be consistent, and if we are just confident and motivated enough, it'll work, right? Because that's what the internet says, that, you are in charge of your own success, all that kind of stuff. What's funny is that I actually did this recently, a few days ago. I looked at every week this year, and I've looked to see what my expectations were about how the week was going to go and what actually happened. And what I found out, what I realized, which was wild, was that there were only, I think, 8 weeks out of this entire year so far, and that's about 1 week per month on average. Only for those weeks were my expectations of the week met. Every other week, I don't know how many weeks that is, I'm not going to do the math right now. Every other one of those weeks, which was the majority of them, I got stressed, I got busy, I got sick, I had other obligations, other commitments come up that it seemed to completely derail me. And this is almost every week of the past year that I thought, oh, this is going to be a good week, I'm going to have a great week, and I'm going to push through whatever comes up, and it's going to be great. And then almost every single week of the past year, that didn't happen. In fact, I had much busier, much more stressful weeks than I thought I was going to have. And it was really eye-opening because you can be the most excited, optimistic, motivated that you can at the start of a week, a month, a year. But unless you pay attention to the reality of your day-to-day, of your week-to-week, of your month, then yeah, you're going to be disappointed. Because, if you have yourself on a schedule where every week is going to be fine, going to be great, and, even when obstacles do come up, it'll be fine. You can just power through it. But then you look back and you have weeks like me where I'm like, oh wow, I was not expecting to be stressed, to be busy, to have so many obligations. And so my expectations, it basically, the reality of my life meant that my expectations need to be changed significantly. So let's say, for example, let me bring this back to language learning in case I'm getting too distracted. So phase 1, you can see right here, phase 1, I'm mirrored. That's why I keep, is over there, okay. So phase 1, mindset. We talk a lot about limiting beliefs, things like if I take a break, I'm putting myself behind schedule. We talk about stuff like that and how you're not running out of time. You have plenty of time, okay? And we talk about the long-term goal, so what you want to end up, what the end of that schedule looks like. What it looks like, what you're able to do, how you feel about your language learning, all that stuff. And then where you are now, because you're probably, if you are watching this video, you are probably not at 0. You probably have some experience. And that experience that you probably have more experience. You probably know more than you really think. So lesson 2 is about the end goal. Lesson 3 is about currently. And then lesson 4 is about short-term goals, like from point A to point B. I am sorry. I'm going to have to get used to this. I'm weird like this. All that is to say, and I did a little bit of rambling, all that is to say is that taking a break does not put you behind schedule. And that is because the breaks are part of the schedule. The breaks should be part of the schedule. And if they're not part of the schedule, then the schedule isn't going to work. You need to have the breaks part of the schedule because you are a human being and everybody needs breaks sometimes. I know that you don't want to take them. I know that you want to be productive and I know that you want to put the time in and the work in and the energy in, but sometimes your brain and your body just cannot, and that's okay. You are a human being, okay? Let me look at the chat. Helen loves that analogy. There is no final destination either, right? You're never going to be perfect, which is fine, nor a native speaker. That's right. While the method really does help you with defining that long-term goal, one of the things that you realize is that even when you do technically achieve that long-term goal, you're not done, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, because once you have the confidence and the clarity to understand what your goal is, you don't want to be done, basically. But that's getting a little ahead of the game. Okay, let me take this off. Okay. And then next question. This was actually a question that was left on last month's AMA that I decided to put into this form. The next question was, how do we curate our environment so that learning a language becomes necessary rather than something we desire? Which is an interesting question. So basically, instead of something that you want to do every single day because, it's not, language learning is not something that we want to do all the time. It's just not. I mean, long term, yes, we want to, but nobody wants to do one thing every day besides like eat, you know? So how do we curate our environment so that learning a language becomes necessary? Like, you have to do it. Now, before I answer this, I do want to put in a disclaimer that this, like, curating an environment so that you have to learn a language is not functional for everybody. Okay? And so it is ultimately up to the individual language learner. And I say that because I know for me, if I made my language learning like that, I would build a lot of resentment for language learning. If it was something that I had to do, I had an obligation to do, that would turn me off personally a lot, but I know this could be helpful to a lot of people, so I'm going to answer it. So, this question directly relates to phase 2, methods, okay? So, this is all about the strategies that we're using to learn a language, okay? So what kind of strategies we can employ into our life so that we have that obligation to use a language in our everyday life. Specifically, the lesson that specifically talks about this is lesson 6 on structure, where we basically talk about, you know, immersion or going to classes, or basically that difference between, you know, having an app or just making it something part of your everyday life. Like, you, for example, change the language on your phone so that you have to use the language in order to function on your phone. Or like immersive strategies like that. Or, you know, for example, I've had my Netflix in Spanish for years, so that kind of stuff where you it's more or less you kind of have to. In that way, you'd be looking for more immersive strategies. So, and you know, when people think about immersion, a lot of the time they assume that it means that you have to move to the country to like physically immerse yourself in the language. And fortunately, because of the year that we live in, or the like postmodern, I think is how you can refer to our current state of history, is that with the internet, it's so easy to immerse yourself right where you are right now. You know, going on to YouTube and finding vlogs and finding like educational content from your target language. Doing the same thing on Netflix. All sorts of things. You know, the internet is global, which means if there are websites that people in, I don't know, Taiwan are using, then you can find those websites. You know, it takes a little bit of effort, but if that's something that will be beneficial to you long term, then by all means. Oh, and by the way, if you wanted to ask questions while we are here, I do have the link pinned in the chat for the survey. So you can go ahead. It's literally just putting in your name and your question. So you can do that if you have any questions coming up. But phase 2 is basically where we talk all about that, because all of these other lessons, output, input, vocab, grammar, which is like, you know, how do you practice speaking? How do you learn to understand a language? Why is it so hard for me to understand a language? All that kind of stuff. That is all built up. And then, And then lesson 6 on structure is basically applying these concepts and deciding how you want to apply them to your life. Like, how much structure do you want? How much immersive strategies do you want? Do you want a teacher? Do you need a teacher? Do you need a community? Or are you more of a just sitting alone in your room and like repeating things out loud kind of person? Because the thing with the method is this. It's that language learning is a huge umbrella of strategies, of concepts, of methods. And the thing is that people get very lost in the weeds of all the different strategies and of all the goals and all the intentions. And it doesn't have to be that way. Okay, you can be really clear about all of the options that are available, all of the methods. Like this phase of the method has literally every single strategy to learn a language you could possibly think of. I'm having a hard time. This one. And it's all about understanding which methods are going to be most beneficial to, to these goals, to your long-term goals. Once you understand what those long-term goals are, you fill in the blanks with, still working on this tech, the strategies and all the apps and all the resources. And then once you figured out what all of that looks like, we have, bear with me, we have metrics. So once we have all of the goals and the path and everything defined, and then we know how it is that we're going to execute it, how do we make sure, how do we make sure that we're staying consistent? How do we make sure that we have a routine that works for our everyday life? See, right here, lesson 3, phase 3, lesson 3 is taking breaks. The first question was all about, I feel like if I take a break, I'm putting myself behind schedule. Guess what? I wasn't all on that because I know this is a major issue that a lot of language learners have. Comments. My little podcast says to get lost in the weeds is a great idiom. It is a good one, isn't it? So those are all the questions I think we have this month. If you have any questions, if you're watching this replay in the future, it's the same link, it's the same survey to send me a question to answer live on this video, live on YouTube, and then you can be in the chat. You can ask me. This is the closest that you can get, by the way, to let me turn this off. To to basically one-on-one coaching with me is basically submitting a question here and then being live on the chat, because I can answer the question and then you can ask follow-up questions. So I really recommend you do that while I'm here. Otherwise, let's see if we can get this to work. Hold on. Otherwise, remember that, is this working? I don't think that's moving. Hold on. Well, remember that enrollment to the method is ending in Friday at Eastern Standard Time, midnight. Friday at midnight Eastern Standard Time. Man, I really thought that I had the tech. I do have the tech a lot better this month, but turns out I have a ways to go with that. Taste of Spanish says it looks so structured. Love it. It is, honestly, and because it's the structure that I needed for like 15 years before I figured the whole language learning thing out. Starting with what your goal is, because my goal is not going to be your goal, how you're going to achieve that goal, and once you're actually doing it, how to make sure that you are staying consistent, being respective of your lifestyle, of your routine, and if it's actually working for you. So thank you for everybody that joined me this month. I hope to see you next month. And again, if you have any questions to be answered that aren't being answered by any of my YouTube videos, there's a lot of them, but I can, if you let me know, I can help you direct you to any YouTube videos that I've made that are answering your question already with specific resource recommendations, because that is my bread and butter. If you haven't tried my language app search, link below in the description, I would highly recommend that, as well as the free course for how to choose a language app. It's kind of like phase 2, which is all about methods, but it's a little bit more surface level, just because it is a free course, and I can't fit all that into a free course. Let's be real. But thank you for everybody that came and joined me, and I will see you next month, the last Wednesday of October. Last Wednesday of October at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.